All righty. I think we are gonna be, yes, people are still entering. That is wonderful. So the future is here and we are here for it. Welcome, welcome, welcome to All Things EV. It kind of feels like an all-you-can-eat buffet, you know, except that it's all you can ask. We don't have any food tonight, but you know, it's a lot of information, so it's food for thought. And we are so happy to have you. Tell a friend and tell your friend to tell your friends' friends so that we can have as many people as possible to enjoy this evening. It's going to be interactive, it's going to be lively, and it's going to be very, very informative. My name is Audrey Williams. I'm the Media and Public Relations Manager at JPS, and it is my privilege and pleasure to host this evening's proceedings for All Things EV. What are EVs anyway? They are electric vehicles, and I know you've been hearing a little bit about them, and you're wondering, like, so why should I even be considering this for my next vehicle purchase? What is this all about anyway? We've had the other vehicles forever from Wappy Phillip, right? If you're a true Jamaican, then it is from Wappy Phillip. But tonight, you are going to hear everything you would want to know thanks to Project E-Drive, which is a collaborative effort between the IDB Lab and the JPS Foundation. We have gathered here together some of the experts in the business who are here to tell us everything you need to know. They're either experts by virtue of their technical expertise, or their driving, or they're a part of the movement. You're going to hear more. So why am I going on and on? Let me just introduce them to you. And so we have, first up, mechanical engineer Xavier Gordon. He is a leader in the e-mobility space. He is the founder and CEO of Flash Motors, Jamaica's first and only dedicated electric vehicle EV company. Flash Motors supplies a full suite of electric cars, buses, trucks, charging hardware and software, and provides financing for fleets to electrify their vehicles all across the Caribbean. He's also the head of the Jamaica Electric Vehicles Association, JEVA, and I'm sure I got it right, Safety and Standards Committee. Welcome, Xavier. I'm gonna give you a round of applause because I know that everybody else is muted. Just so you know, you're truly welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, team.
You are so welcome. And up next, we have Oliver Hill. He is the CEO of Tropical Renewables Energy. Tropical Renewable Energy serves to establish Tropical Battery's footprint in the renewable energy and electric mobility solutions space. And that is separate from its automotive products operation. And he is also the treasurer for JEVA. Welcome, Sir Oliver Hill. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's all about EVs tonight, and we're so, so happy to have you. There he is. Thank you. All right, great. And up next is Andrew Jackson. He is president and CEO of JETCON Corporation. JETCON is one of Jamaica's leading car dealers. JETCON, of course, has been offering the typical internal combustion engine, or ICE, as we call it for short, but it has now moved towards the adoption of electric vehicles. They're expanding into EVs. Must be a good reason. Andrew also joins us as the inaugural president of JEVA. Thank you so much, Andrew Jackson. We are very, very happy to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just imagine my applause times 1,000, okay? Welcome, welcome. We're happy to have you. And our final panelist is Dr. Carolyn Pinnock Jackson, who is an EV owner and driver. Okay, so the true test, right, is in the eating. She's an EV owner and driver and has been for a long time. She's very accustomed to venturing into new, because Dr. Pinnock Jackson is recognized as one of the Caribbean's first female locally trained surgeons. Kudos to you, my lady. The first woman to gain a pediatric surgical specialist degree at the University of the West Indies. So first is not new to her. It kind of stands to order then that you would drive an EV. And you're all gonna have to forgive me, but she's an old immaculate girl as well. So big up and Astra Prospera. Forgive me, everybody else, please. Welcome, Carolyn, welcome. So we have a fabulous panel here. Again, on behalf of the E-Drive project, I welcome everyone. This engagement is going to be friendly, it's going to be informal, and of course, it's going to be respectful. So let's roll right into it. And we're going to start off with understanding the basics, because that's where everything is, understanding the basics. This question is for you, Xavier. What is an EV? And for those of you who didn't catch it, that's an acronym for electric vehicle, right? So Xavier, what's an EV?
Thanks, Audrey. It's a loaded question, but to put it simply, EV is an electric vehicle. One of the things I've noticed is the term has get tossed around a little bit, especially in Jamaica and across the region, where persons are confusing EV, electric vehicle, with electronic vehicle. So I want to make the case that every car that we drive is an electronic vehicle. It has electronics in it. It has, gadgets and accessories. Okay. What makes an electric vehicle is the fact that it's driven by an electric motor as opposed to an internal combustion engine vehicle. Now, typically when people are referring to EVs, they're talking about battery electric vehicles. So that electric motor is getting their power from a battery, but it could also get its power from a fuel cell. So there are really two types of EVs, a battery electric vehicle, which is what we're commonly used to. So that's your Nissan Leafs, your Teslas, and then there are fuel cell electric vehicles, which are a little less common than we normally be used to. I don't think there are any fuel cell electric vehicles in Jamaica or in the region. So really, an electric vehicle is a vehicle that is driven by an electric motor, and that electric motor is then powered by some source of energy, which most likely means it's a battery.
All right. Okay, great. So electronic is what everybody have all the time anyway.
Exactly.
Right. So electric is powered by electricity, basically.
Right. That electric motor is basically powered from electricity that's pulled from a battery or from a fuel cell.
All righty. And I'm going to shoot out some questions now. So this one is for you, Andrew. Do we have different types of electric vehicles?
Well, as Xavier just said, we have the battery electric and we have the fuel cell electric. One could also consider the hybrid electric, some sort of electric vehicle. But generally, we are talking about those that are run by battery or by fuel cells. Okay, great. And I think you kind of touched on the next question already, because we want to know what is meant by hybrid. That's kind of being tossed around. People talking about hybrid. What in the world is a hybrid vehicle? So, and is it really an EV? So hybrid is a crossover between a ICE, internal combustion engine, and an electric vehicle. So these cars use gasoline to run an engine, and the engine either run the wheels or it runs a motor, runs a generator that generates power to run a motor. So it doesn't have to be plugged in. So it generates its electricity from the fuel. Okay, so these are hybrids. So it's like a cross between a full electric car and a gasoline power. So is it that it crosses over, like if you run out of gas, then the electricity part of the car begins to chip in? Let me just confess right now, while all these people are experts, I am what you call your laywoman. I know nothing of these things, which is probably the best thing for the people who are listening who may not know anything either. So you have to break it down real simple, like I'm 10 or 5, and tell me, what does that mean? Like you run out of gas and now you switch over to electric? Is that how it is? Not really. If you run out of gas, that's it. No backup. This is not okay. Go ahead. But what it means is that you gain from the efficiency of the electric side of the car. Okay. But you still continue the convenience of the gasoline side. Okay. So the car will be powered intermittently by both the electric motor and by the gasoline. Okay. But interchangeably? Interchangeably, and it's done seamlessly. That's one kind of hybrid car. There's another kind of hybrid car called a series hybrid, where it's closer to an electric car in that an electric motor runs the wheels at all times. Okay. And all the gasoline engine does is to keep the battery fully charged. So you have two types of hybrid, what they call a parallel and what they call a series. Okay, gotcha. So a car is like the Nissan Note e-Power is a series hybrid. So the wheels are run entirely by the electric motor, while the popular Toyota Prius, for example, is parallel, where the wheels are run, alternately by the gasoline engine or electric motors, or sometimes both.
Okay, that's thank you for that. Like I feel like I'm learning already, and we just start. Okay, great. So Oliver, why are electric vehicles deemed to be good for the environment?
So essentially because they're more efficient. Ultimately all our energy comes from the sun in one way or another, but electric vehicles are much more efficient in converting the energy into motive power. So essentially, if you take a combustion engine vehicle, I think the most efficient combustion vehicle might get 27% to 30% efficiency. That means 70% plus of that fuel or that energy in the gasoline or the diesel is wasted. Wasted as heat or wasted in many different ways in the friction, whereas electric vehicles are up to 80% efficient. So basically the losses are cut from 70% down to 20%. And a lot of naysayers say, well, you're just moving the pollution or the exhaust from the tailpipe to the power plant.
Yeah.
And that there's some truth to that, because if your power generation matrix is predominantly made up of fossil fuel based power generation like ours is in Jamaica, then you are contributing to more power generation utilizing fossil fuels. But that efficiency gain means that you're burning less fuel or burning less combustion fuel, heavy fuel oil or diesel or liquefied natural gas at the power plant than you would be burning gasoline to move the same distance. So it's in essence more efficient to also because of economies of scale to generate power in a power plant than it is to generate forward motion in a combustion vehicle. So that's one reason. And then of course, local air pollution from tailpipe emissions has a lot of negative effects on human health, for example. These emissions are not just causing global warming and climate change, but they cause asthma and a whole host of respiratory illnesses that we would rather avoid. So the other factor in here, as I mentioned, is the quality of our generation matrix. You mentioned that I'm leading a renewable energy division at Tropical Battery called Tropical Renewable Energy. We are also working with a division called Tropical Mobility dedicated to electric vehicles, but the combination of renewable energy and electric vehicles for a country like Jamaica that has an abundance of sunshine is very compelling, because of course people are always concerned about the cost of charging an electric vehicle, especially when they're charging it off the grid. If we are trying to clean up our grid, Jamaica has a very ambitious plan to make our grid more climate friendly, decarbonize the generation matrix. I believe we're aiming for something like 50% renewable energy on the grid in a very short period of time. So to the extent that we can generate more power on the grid from renewable energy, then we are actually making electric mobility all the more green. And then of course, we are big proponents at Tropical Renewable Energy, and we're not alone. There's a lot of other renewable energy companies in Jamaica, and even the utility is working towards more renewable energy on the grid.
Definitely.
So we are promoting energy independence at a national level, at a regional level, and really just at a household level and a business level. So for example, at my home, I have solar powering my house, and I have a lot of excess solar generation. I send most of that power to JPS during the day because sometimes I'm not here or I'm just not using that much energy.
Mhm.
I have a net billing contract, so that gives me a credit against my bill. So I have a negative JPS bill. You know, since I've gotten net billing, I haven't paid JPS, which is wonderful. But that excess power that I'm sending to JPS, I can also put it into an electric vehicle, and then I'm not just cutting out my JPS bill, I'm cutting out my gas station bill. And then, you know, that's some serious savings. You know, that's
Yeah.
savings on the order of $6,000 a year. And, you know, in a few years, that pays for my electric vehicle. So essentially, electric vehicles are great for the environment and they're great for your pocket. So that's why we are very convinced that this is you know, an area we want to be in, both on the renewable energy side and on the electric mobility side.
Great. Okay, thank you. It's a whole ecosystem right there that you described, right? Xavier,
Great.
do electric cars have engines and transmissions?
So I mean, again, you know, Andrew had answered, you know, in a very succinct way, sort of the hybrid conversation. So for the purpose of answering this question, I'm not going to consider hybrids, because a hybrid could have two fuel sources. It could be a battery, or it could be your fuel tank. It could have two propulsion sources, which could be a motor or an engine. We're just going to stick with, you know, what we'd consider a mainstream electric vehicle, which means it's powered by an electric motor, whether it gets its energy solely from a battery or from a or from, you know, a combination of a battery and a fuel tank via generator. If it's powered by an electric motor, it'll have a transmission per motor, one single speed transmission per motor. And the reason for that is that an electric motor can really respond to different torque requirements by just adjusting its voltage and current. It doesn't need any gearing like a traditional engine would. When you have a mechanical engine, you need gears in order to be able to meet the torque requirements at different speeds for the vehicle. An electric motor does that on its own. So yes, there is a transmission, but it will be for each electric motor. And I say each because some electric vehicles may have dual motors. Typically sports electric vehicles will have dual motors, and each of those motors will have one transmission each.
So if I'm understanding you, yes, it can have transmission, but I'm hearing one or two.
Depending, yeah.
But no need for gears. The way we understand gears, like drive reverse, no gears inside the EV.
No, you'll have your drive and reverse, but you know, your typical internal combustion engine will have, you know, 4, 8, 12 gears. This is why they call, you know, like a 12-speed transmission, a very complicated transmission system. They will have a transmission, but it's extremely simple, extremely robust, and, you know, for the most case, won't need any sort of maintenance in the way a traditional transmission system would. So you wouldn't be carrying your electric vehicle in for transmission service unless it got into an accident where it was physically damaged.
I like how that sound, you know, the no transmission maintenance. Yes, go ahead, Andrew.
If I can come in here a second.
Sure.
I wouldn't want to use the word transmission. Transmission means, certainly in Jamaica, you know, has a lot of negative connotations. I rather call it a reduction gear, right? You know, so I noticed when the host heard 2 transmissions, she was like, wow, 2 transmissions, that's not so.
Transmission's a serious thing in my world, you know. In
And
my world, a transmission is
I rather call it reduction gears, which really needs no maintenance whatsoever, or very little maintenance. Okay.
Speaking my language right up in here, no maintenance, in bold, underline. I'm rather liking that. Okay, so then just to pick up, to add to that, Xavier, what are the standard parts of an EV?
Great question. So, I mean, anything that's touching the road is going to be the same. So when you're talking about your suspension, your wheels, you know, brakes, everything, that's typically the same in an EV. Where it differs is the fact that you're going to have your, charging port and a converter, which basically turns your electricity over into the right voltage to charge your battery. Your battery is going to be there. Then you're going to have your electric motor, your reduction gear, as Andrew would put it, to be able to manage the movement of that power through that motor to the wheels. And then you'll have your 12-volt battery system, which controls your electronics. You'll have, a pump to run coolant through the system, whether it's your air condition or to keep the battery cool. Typically, those will be separate. And that is pretty much it. There isn't really much. If we had the opportunity to, show you guys what the inside of an electric vehicle looks like in the trunk or in the under the bonnet, and it isn't a lot. And you'd actually notice when you start looking at a lot of modern EVs, especially cars that were designed to be electric only, that the front of the cars are actually greatly reduced. There's not a lot of space, or not a lot of need for space up front for that. So when we start talking about the amount of components that are in an electric vehicle that need maintenance, again, anything that touches the road will be exactly the same. But when it comes to the actual operation of the vehicle, there really isn't much there to be done on a maintenance side. Typically, if you're going in for service, you'll be, looking at your wheels, your shocks, your suspension as normal. There's no exhaust system. And in fact, when it comes to
story.
nothing of that sort. No oil changes, which obviously is a big thing because there's no oil to change. You're putting in your windshield washer fluid to make sure that's topped up. You're probably going to be doing software updates. One thing I'll even note when it comes to braking, depending on the type of EV you get, which manufacturing, which model, they do have the capability for what we call regenerative braking. So that's when you're using the electric motor actually to slow the vehicle down and not applying the brakes. So we're talking about a big reduction in the wear and tear on your brake pads as well too. Again, depending on the model, every EV sort of has a different level of aggression of what that regenerative braking looks like. But the most aggressive of those in the marketplace, some vehicles will even tell you to put, slam on the brakes every few, 100 kilometers because you haven't really used it much. So, there's an opportunity there for you to really be able to save when it comes to the operational costs of your vehicle as well.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think I read once that a regular internal combustion engine has like you'd say, I don't know, 200 and odd parts. Don't quote me. I'm sure my number is probably wrong compared to the EV, which had like a handful of parts.
It's about 2,000 plus parts in your internal combustion.
2,000 plus in the regular vehicle, and about how many EV?
You're in the low hundreds. You're
low hundreds compared to 2,000 parts. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, that takes us to the end of segment 1 for understanding the basics. So, in a nutshell, and my nut is very small. The nutshell is EVs are electrically powered vehicles and far less parts. Yes, it can use. The hybrid is kind of like, I don't know if you want to count it as fully EV, but no, it's not fully. That's the whole point. It's hybrid. So you have a fuel component and a battery operated component, and they can be parallel or they can be serial. See, I learned something. I was listening. Thank you. Okay, so that was understanding the basics. Let's move on now to EV performance. Because that's the whole point. And you get a vehicle, it's not just to look at it and think it nice. All right, I'm going to start off with you, Andrew. How do electric cars perform vis-a-vis their internal combustion engine counterpart, which is gas? How do they compare?
Very, very good question. So the typical EV is it has a lot of torque. So it moves off very, very easily. And in most cases pretty fast, move from, let's say, from stop. There are EVs now that are go what they call 0 to 60 miles per hour as fast as some of the very, very, very expensive supercars.
Wow.
So typically they're very certainly very fast on the low end.
Okay.
The EVs are the way EVs are designed. The batteries are one of the probably the heaviest component in the car, which makes it nice to balance the car. So batteries are normally placed at the bottom of the car. This makes the center of gravity of an electric vehicle very low, which makes the EV really nice for cornering, right? So again, your typical EV, you'll be able to, if you like to drive a little fast, sometimes like myself, it's really nice around.
Always within the speed limit, right? Just say that now, make them know.
Of course, you're gonna
They
steer
are
with it
always, yeah.
most
For
of the
all the
time.
people, law enforcement, they're watching. You never go above the speed limit. I just wanted to put that in for you. Continue.
Never go above the speed limit.
Never.
But because your center of gravity is low, it means that again, typically, these cars will corner much better, will hold your corners much better than your typical ICE car. It also means that they're less likely to roll over. So there's also a safety issue.
Great.
There, right? So performance-wise, and of course, performance in terms of fuel economy, it's significantly better than your gasoline car. As was stated before, the typical efficiency of an electric motor is in the order of 80% compared to a gasoline car, which is in the order of 20%. Right. So it's better performance in terms of fuel economy, better performance in terms of driving.
Great, great. And Xavier, what about the economy of it to compare the two?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're comparing, if you're shopping and trying to compare between an EV and an ICE vehicle, you're really looking at 4 components. First and foremost is going to be the purchase price. So, if I am buying a mid-size SUV, first thing you're going to do is compare apples to apples as best as possible to understand where the purchase price difference is between the two. Typically, EVs are more expensive. In the past, they've been even more expensive, but the government of Jamaica has implemented a policy to encourage the adoption of EVs as of last June, with a reduction in the duty down to a flat 10% and no GCT on the purchase of an electric vehicle. So right now in Jamaica, I would say especially on the higher end units, EVs are a great value on the purchase price. Lower end, we're still finding ourselves working at probably a 10 to 15% premium. Maybe sometimes up to 20% premium on it. But as the market continues to evolve, as a lot of the dealers start to get more and more involved with it, we'll see more options come on board for the Jamaican consumer, businesses and for consumers. And I believe that in the next year or so, we'll be at price parity across all classes of vehicles. When we start talking about energy costs, we sort of talked about it earlier on, where on a per kilometer basis, electric vehicles are far more efficient, and therefore the cost is significant. From all the tests and studies that we've seen, from all the vehicles we've seen deployed over the past, let's say 18 months, we're looking at anywhere between a 40 to 60% savings in the energy cost when it comes to providing energy to your electric vehicle. In some cases, we've seen up to 70% savings actually in the total cost of purchasing electricity versus purchasing gas or diesel on a per kilometer basis. So definitely EVs are winning in that perspective. The maintenance cost, is also another factor to sort of take into place. Again, because of the reduced number of moving parts, there's the reduced number of activities required to maintain your vehicle. So right now we're seeing about a 50% reduction in the maintenance cost of vehicles as they've been used in fleets, especially. We've been monitoring that quite a bit, and fleet operators are pretty happy with it. The last part is the sort of disposal or resale price. And that's the part that, we're still very early on in the Jamaican market, know exactly where that's going to land. We have seen in other foreign markets that the resale price of EVs have been extremely strong because people are understanding the value of a low cost means of transportation, and that, especially during tough economic times, carries a premium. So whereas during the recession, the global recession, during the pandemic, we saw most car sales and most car manufacturers decline in number of sales, EV sales and manufacturers that have dedicated themselves to electric vehicles were the only ones to see an increase. So, you know, that is a
Really?
strong indicator that the resale price and the longevity of EVs will be pretty favorable for the consumer. So when you combine all four factors, there's a really strong value proposition today in Jamaica to electrify. You're right.
Okay, all right, great. And let me read this question. And this is about tires. I'm going to throw this one at you, Andrew. EV tires are currently vehicle specific. Some even throw errors if you don't replace them with manufacturers' specific tires. This undoubtedly drives up the cost. Specifically for used EVs, how would this impact a buyer for a used EV?
Okay, so tires is probably the most hardworking part of your car. Just think about it. For only a few square inches of that tire touches the road at any one time, but it has to support the weight of the car. It has to transmit the power from the motor to the road. It has to brake the car. It has to corner, right? And it has to prevent the car from sliding when the road is wet. Tires work really, really hard. And tires work even hard on an electric vehicle, because electric vehicles are heavier. Electric vehicles are heavier. They have more power, which means that they put more pressure on your tire when the car is moving off. And when you have to brake them because the car is heavier, it's more pressure on the tires. So tires for an EV, the manufacturer. And one other factor, in order to squeeze more efficiency out of the EV, out of the electric vehicle, the tires that are specific for electric vehicles have to have, or typically have lower rolling resistance, but at the same time they have to brake just as efficiently or even more efficiently.
What's rolling resistance? I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. So when your car is traveling, let's say at a constant speed, there's always some resistance to the movement of that vehicle, right?
Okay.
So you have to provide power for the car to move even at a constant speed.
Oh, I see. Friction against the road, that's the rolling resistance? Okay.
Resistance against the road. So typically EVs the tires on EVs have lower rolling resistance in order to squeeze more kilometers out of that battery.
Right.
Okay, so typically manufacturers specify what tires works best for their cars. Okay, and if you choose to use other tires, the range on that car may very well be reduced. So tires, so non-EV tires, they will work. They will take the car from point A to point B. But some cars and some manufacturers actually have homologated tires, meaning they specify what tires should be installed on that car, and if you don't install that tires, it may very well throw a error code, right? So if you have one of those cars that specifies a tire, that has an homologated tire, then I guess you will have to buy that specific tire for that car, which may drive up your cost in the long run.
That is interesting. So basically they should stick with the manufacturer's recommendations in terms of the tire that they're going to purchase. Are these tires, do they wear pretty much the same way the regular vehicle wears, in the sense of, how when your tire wearing down, you can see the threading and so on? The principle is the same, or is that a completely different principle for their tires?
Principle is essentially the same, except that the tires that are used on electric vehicles. Remember, I said electric vehicles are heavier, which means they are faster, which means they put more pressure on the tire. They demand more of the tire than your regular car. But typically the tires that are made specifically for electric vehicles tend to be of a harder compound. Okay. And so that if you were to use those tires on a regular car, they probably would wear at a slower rate, right? Typically also that the air pressure in your EV is a bit higher than in your regular car.
Okay.
But these tires tend to be a bit more expensive, right? It is suggested that over time, as EVs become more popular, that the prices of these tires will come down. But for now, they are more expensive.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's interesting. And the last question in this segment on performance goes to you, Xavier. Has a study been done about how EVs manage the, okay, so the question said terrible roads in Jamaica. Well, you know that not all the roads in Jamaica are terrible. We got some nice roads too. But for the few terrible roads that we do have, how has a study been done in terms of how EVs can negotiate those roads?
Yeah, I mean, we've been bringing in EVs now for, well over, I'm going to say 16 months. We've been lucky to be part of a couple programs. The IDB is part of that program where we've actually implemented some electric vehicles that we've supplied into corporate fleets. We've also been, blessed with the opportunity to actually loan some of these vehicles out to some government agencies as well for testing and for feedback. So we've definitely had the information to see how these vehicles perform on an island-wide basis in a variety of situations, both commercial and from a recreational point of view. And we've noticed definitely, to Andrew's point, that tires are somewhat of an issue, especially on the performance vehicles. When we're talking about the commercial fleet vehicles that are driven, I would say at a acceptable, normal, average speed on normal and average roads, we haven't really seen much of an impact.
Okay.
But when we've seen our performance models really being unleashed, we've definitely noticed an increase in incidents with tires, especially when it comes to dealing with, like Andrew said, high torque vehicles on the wear and tear of those tires. So I would definitely say the bigger and heavier the EV, or care you should probably take into what your tire maintenance looks like. And that's simply not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a function of the performance that an EV can actually put on the road and the wear and tear and force that it can put on the road. So I would echo Andrew's statements in the sense that, bigger, heavier, higher torque vehicles will end up wearing the tires out. We have seen our clients use regular tires, not EV specific tires, again, with no real issue. And we have seen our customers that are using EV specific Continentals get the performance that they want out of it, but that performance definitely came at a cost in terms of wear and tear. So it really all comes down to how you drive the vehicle and what your real purpose is. If your purpose is to get the most out of it and drive it in an economical manner, I don't think you'll notice too much of a difference. But if your purpose is to really use that EV and use all the benefits and faculties that are available to you, you may pay for it a little bit later on with wear and tear on the tire.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. That takes us to the end of the performance section in terms of the questions that we have here. So basically, the summary at the end of the performance section is that the EV outperforms the internal combustion engine on a number of fronts. That 0 to 60 though, wow, like on your mark, get set, yeah. So all within the speed limit. So let's go to the next section on charging. Xavier, why you shake your head? First up, this goes to you, Andrew. Can I charge an EV using the regular socket in my house, or do I need to have a special socket installed?
You can charge in your regular 110-volt socket, but it's very slow. 220 volts would work much better.
Okay.
But your 110 can work. As I said, it's very slow. Right?
That sounds like whole night and more. Next morning, you're like, what happened? So 220 ideally.
220 ideally, yes.
Okay. All right, cool. Xavier, do all electric cars use the same type of charging plug? And by the way, when we talk about charging plugs, because most of us, our plug just looks like that thing that we use on our iron or, cell phone. So does the I should ask before you tell me about the same type. Does it at all use a plug that looks like what we know to be a plug? Regular plug?
Yes.
True.
But the plug in the cars is where the difference can be.
Okay. So like regular plug can plug into
Regular 110-volt plug with 3 pins, that will work.
3 pins, just like your
Just like your
laptop or
iron and
whatever.
your fridge and your cell phone, it works just the same.
Sounds accessible. All right. So then tell me about the types of charging plugs then, Xavier.
No problem. So just like your wall outlets can vary depending where in the world you are. So if you travel to the UK, it looks different from China, it looks different from Australia. That's the same type of thing. Globally, we have 5 plug standards across the world. We have the North American standard, the European standard, the Japanese DC standard, the Chinese GBT standard, and Tesla has its own standard as well.
Okay.
Because Jamaica imports vehicles from all over the world, we have all 5 here in Jamaica, which, you know, is not necessarily the greatest, but it's more of a factor of just how Jamaica supplies its vehicles. So you'll find Japanese cars typically will have a mix between the American and Japanese standard. Most right-hand drive cars across the world will come with the European standard. And then you'll have your American imports that will have the American standard. And of course, the Tesla cars that are coming in Jamaica have their own Tesla standard, unless they're European, in which case they have the European standard. So it's a big bag of charging plug standards that are happening right now in Jamaica. Part of my role at JEVA is to, as part of the Safety and Standards Committee, is to hopefully be able to establish an acceptable standard here in Jamaica and across the region to reduce the amount of headaches and confusion for both the consumers as well as for the public charging operators. In the meantime, you know, persons that are bringing in their own vehicles are bringing them from a variety of places are using adapters so that they can mix and match depending on what the charging infrastructure looks like here in Jamaica. So right now we're sort of dealing with the wild west. We have seen a number of markets across the Caribbean sort of start to homologate. Barbados being, you know, the #1 market in the region, they've homologated around the European standard. St. Lucia and Guyana are also homologated on the European standard. So we're going to have that discussion here in Jamaica and see where we can find a good common ground that makes a lot of sense. That's probably going to always just be more for the new cars. On the used cars, that will continue to be sourced from anywhere, wherever the consumer wants. And, you know, I think the used car segment will probably have to deal with adapters a little bit more than the new car segment.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very interesting. So then, Andrew, when an EV is sold, does it come with the charger? Like on the cell phone, have a charger in the box? You get a little charger for your car?
Okay. Typically, no. Some will come with a charger. Some would. Most of the newer cars actually don't come with a charger. We for example supply, you know, the Teslas we supply, we sell them with an adapter, so they can use the Japanese standard plug or the North American standard plug. But Tesla is a little different from everyone else.
Yes.
But typically, well, certainly, as I said, on the used side, they typically don't come with chargers now.
Okay, so the adapter that it comes.
Chargers are readily available, I must tell you.
Okay. And so the adapter that it comes with is one that you can just use in your house.
No. The adapter is to, you know, when Xavier speak about these 5 standards, he's really speaking about plug on the car, not the plug on the wall.
Ah,
okay?
good.
About the plug on the car, right? Right, Xavier?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you for that.
Plug on the car, right? So when he speaks about the Tesla standard, that's one kind of plug. The European standard, I think that's called that's a CCS2. That's a different type of plug on the car.
On the car, okay.
The adapter is on the car, not on the wall.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
So charging cables are you know, certainly readily available at places like Amazon and so on. Just like your cell phone charger. You know, we're talking about a plug in the cell phone, I like to compare electric cars with cell phones.
Yeah,
You
me
plug
too.
you drive them home, you plug them in, you leave them charged overnight, and you
Yes.
use them in the morning. So as you know, for example, an iPhone uses one type of plug, and a Samsung uses a different type of plug. And if you had an older phone, it would use another type of plug. This is what Xavier is referring to, the plug on the car itself.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
the charging cable is a cable that can be purchased at Amazon or any of these popular online sites.
All right. Wonderful. Great. So the next question that I have here, I think you kind of answered it though. How do I know what charger to buy to charge at home? I think that's I don't know if you want to just say a quick sentence about that, but we've kind of gone there. Either of you can take it. How do I know what charger to buy to charge at home? You want to grab that, Andrew or Xavier?
Again, there's a fairly standard charger that the Japanese cars use, the American cars use. I think it's called a J1772, I think it is.
Yeah, J1772, yeah.
J1772. That fits all the Japanese cars, and I believe they fit the American cars except for the Teslas. Right? The Teslas require an adapter. I'm not so sure about the cars from China, but Xavier can probably speak more about those.
Okay. All right, great. Can you charge, and we know the answer to this actually because all of us spoke to that a bit. Can you charge an EV from solar panel / photovoltaic systems? That was addressed, I believe, and that whole ecosystem that exists. I don't know if anybody wants to add to it though, but I think it has already been answered. Yeah, okay, we're good.
Yeah, I would just say on that point, not all chargers are equal, and the chargers that we've been discussing that plug into any outlet, typical outlet, that would be kind of like a level 1 or like a 110 volt charger, which is really kind of a trickle charge that will take, like we were saying, a very long time. Typically at home you would want to install a 220 volt charger, like what you would use for your AC unit or for your washing machine or dryer. And typically those are hardwired, and the smart chargers can actually monitor how much solar power you're using at any given time and ensure that when you're charging your vehicle, you're just charging it off of your solar power. For example, we represent a charger manufacturer brand called Wallbox, and these are smart chargers that basically integrate really nicely into the whole ecosystem of your renewable energy generation, whether in the home or the business. So essentially, yes, you can power anything with solar, including electric vehicles, and using a smart charger, you can ensure that you're maximizing use of your independent, renewable energy, self-generated renewable energy, rather than relying on the grid.
Right. And when you're charging via solar, that's not different. You spoke to trickle charging, so to speak, if you go with like a 110. So you don't have you don't get that trickle effect with solar. It's just as effective as if you were doing 220 or so. But
it would depend on, again, the power supply. I mean, you could you can actually charge, if you have enough solar capacity, you could go straight from DC to level 3 charging, which would be the most efficient possible scenario. But most of us wouldn't be able to afford or even want to install a level 3 charger that's very high voltage and would require a lot of solar capacity, much more than a typical home would need. So typically, just like most homes would have 110 volts and 220 volts for different appliances or electronics, we would basically use the same solar power supply to charge either with a 110-volt charger or a 220-volt charger.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for that, Oliver. Are there ways to reduce the cost of charging an EV? Xavier?
Oh, right, that's my question, yes. So yeah, I mean, you know, first and foremost, if you're charging from the grid, you want to take a look at your tariff structure or your rate structure from JPS. JPS has been rolling out time of use across different tariff cases. So you want to look at, you know, where your lowest opportunity cost to charge is. So when your kilowatt hours are the cheapest, which typically tends to be overnight. In Jamaica has a peak around late evening. So plugging into the grid right when you get home from work or school is probably not the greatest time for JPS. So I would imagine that the tariffs are higher then, but you know, past that 9-10 o'clock range when everybody else is sort of getting to bed and the grid is sort of sitting there idle, that's when electricity is relatively cheap. And that's probably the best time to be doing the charge. So, you know, looking at, you know, whether you're a residential or commercial class and having a good understanding of what your rate classes and time structures like with JPS is probably the first and best and easiest way to do it. I'd always recommend, just from an efficiency point of view, AC charging. It generates the least heat, and so there's it's a lot more efficient, not necessarily from a time perspective, but just from a transfer of energy perspective. AC charging will always, you know, end up being making sure each electron is getting into the battery. And then obviously, if you have renewables, tying your renewables to the time when you're charging, either, you know, through a smart charger like the wall box units that Oliver is talking about, where it can control the flow of electricity when the solar is available, or having a battery system, in which case, you know, you may be accumulating energy throughout the day, maybe so let's say when you're not at home, and then dispensing that energy at night. You know, levelized solar over the long run is the cheapest source of power, that and wind, available in Jamaica. So if you do have the capability to add solar and storage onto it, while it may be expensive up front, over the long run, that's the lowest cost of your electrons getting into your vehicle.
All righty, great. And the last question in this section about charging goes to you, Oliver. Will charging at home significantly increase my electric bill? I know we already spoke to efficiency and so on, but I'm gonna still let you just give your thoughts on that. Will that increase the electric bill?
So the short answer is yes, especially if you don't have your own power generation using solar or wind at home. Essentially, it's going to be like adding a couple AC units that are on every time you're charging your car. Like Xavier was saying, with time of use rates, then we can kind of mitigate against a significant increase. And one of the things that we are promoting as the Jamaica Electric Vehicle Association is for special tariffs to be designed to encourage adoption of electric vehicles, for example, such that at nighttime, when the utility has a lot of kind of excess capacity from all that baseload generation, which isn't being utilized, if we had a special rate for charging electric vehicles, maybe you need a special meter or you need a special license like we have a net billing license, then we could take advantage of all that excess capacity that's currently not being utilized to deliver less expensive electricity to electric vehicles. But today, as things stand, the best way to power an electric vehicle is using solar generation. And you know that applies whether at home or at work. So that's another thing that we're obviously encouraging as companies begin to transition their fleet vehicles to electric vehicles. We would want to ensure that they're also installing solar power to power the business as well as those fleets.
Right. And I believe, was it Xavier who had said it, that while you are increasing your electric bill in terms of charging, the comparison with that and going to the gas station was that you were still out ahead, because the gas, if you had to do the same thing at the gas station, it would have cost you more. So it's actually a saving to go electric rather than to go gas.
Yeah, Xavier can probably speak to this in the Jamaican context better than anybody, but from what I've seen, we're talking about a 50% reduction in the cost, on a per kilometer, traveled basis using electricity versus gasoline or diesel, electricity from JPS at some of the highest electricity rates in the world. So, that just clearly demonstrates the efficiency gains of electric drivetrains versus internal combustion engines.
All righty, EVs for the win. So that brings our charging section to an end. And now that was actually very, very interesting. So yes, you can charge your EVs at home. Just like you can charge your cell phone at home, right? And there are 5 different types of plugs. Who knew, right? And you can get your adapters and so on. And of course, you can charge from solar systems. Solar systems can charge anything. And yes, it is still a saving when you compare how much it'll cost you to charge your EV versus how much it'll cost you to go to the gas station and get gas. All righty. Now over to the eating of the pudding. This takes us over to Dr. Carolyn Pinnock Jackson. Carolyn, step up internet style.
I'm here.
Yes, you've been sitting quietly, lady, but don't you think that didn't mean that you were not on the agenda, ma'am. You're right here. So it's all about you and your driving experience now. So here we go. When did you buy your EV and what prompted your decision to go electric with your transportation?
Okay. So we bought a 2011 EV in 2016. So it was about, a used vehicle when we got it. We imported it ourselves, which was very adventurous, and I don't think we would do that again. But yeah, what prompted getting an EV? There were more than one factor, but for me personally, I'm a scientist by nature and I'm a child advocate by nature. And I believe in a lot of the male-driven EV conversations, we don't talk that much about the impact of environmental challenges on our future. But if you care about children, you must care about the environment. And if you care about children's environment and the future, then you have to be involved in what's going to be sustainable. And so I thought, this is a big thing moving across the world, and it must come to Jamaica because we don't make cars. So we got to buy what's being made. So I was very, very interested in, I guess, testing it out. In my head, I thought it was going to be like chitty chitty bang bang. And I was phenomenally pleased to discover how freaking fast these cars can go. I mean, you press on the gas and you're like,
whoa.
Yes, I realized my foot may have been a little more heavy than I thought. It was very satisfying. The first drive, I thought it would feel like driving a sewing machine, and it was an incredible ride. I was really very pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Like, watch me just run out tomorrow.
That's right.
Wow, that's quite a story. So were you ever concerned about charging challenges?
So full confession, I'm married to an engineer. If you know anything about engineers, every challenges are just an excitement for them. But I figured that if the car did run out of electricity, then he was gonna have to come for me. But what we had initial solar system on the house, and it needed some kind of upgrading before we could charge the car. So initially we charged directly on JPS.
Mhm.
And I must confess, this did affect my intestinal fortitude because I thought the bill was going to be ridiculous. So to put things in perspective, I used to drive a Honda Fit, barely
Yeah.
uses gas.
Yes.
And I was spending about 20,000 a month on gas at the time.
Yes.
The first light bill that we got from JPS when I was driving the Leaf exclusively, the bill went up by $7,000. So charging directly on JPS, not using the solar, I actually saved $13,000 in my transportation bill. And I was
Wow.
shocked. I was genuinely shocked.
I
Of
did
course,
not
having
expect to hear
upgraded
that.
the solar systems now, I've gotten rid of that $7,000. But I mean, upgrading a solar system is not free, so there's still some element of cost for sure, and they require maintenance for sure. You become the power plant, which is a real challenge. You know, the benefits of solar systems are real, and the responsibility is equally real. But the cost factor for me was almost as wonderful as the speed factor.
So, you know, you really surprised me because I was bracing. So your gas bill, well, your transportation fuel bill fell from 20 grand to 7.
Yes. I was
Nothing to
really
sneeze at.
very
Nothing to
pleasantly
sneeze
surprised.
at. Nothing to sneeze
And
at.
we were only charging at home because at that time there was nowhere else to charge. Certainly my
Right.
workplace would have nothing to do with me and my plug initially. I must confess though, I got a little meter that measures how much electricity you use. And I did actually on a couple of occasions, thanks to the people at work, plugged my car into the 110 at the office, and it was a big, you know, show and tell kind of thing to say, if I charge the car here, you can see how much energy I have used. So when the bill comes at the end of the month, you can charge me for that. And we did it once or twice, mostly I think because the folks in the office were very curious. I mean, a lot of people are curious about what are you doing, how much does it cost, so on and so forth. So they were very curious about it. And then they saw for themselves that I charged 2 days a week for 3 weeks and what it did to the office electricity bill. And they were like, maybe this thing
Maybe not so
isn't
much,
as scary as we thought. But the 110 charging, as I've said before, is not super efficient. It was really more for demonstration purposes than to get me back home.
Yeah.
But I've found though, a lot of people are anxious about charging, and you don't actually have to charge every day. You know, you depending on what driving you're doing, what your normal activities are, you can go 2, 3, 4 days and not need to charge. So the thought that it's going to run out and you're going to have to plug into, you know, a stranger's house it's not as scary as you think. It's really very reasonable to think that you get home and charge, because we spend a lot of time not in our car, you know, or you get to work and charge, which ultimately I am hoping that we will get a charging port at the office, but that's a dream in the pipeline.
Working on it.
Oh yes, I am definitely working on it.
Oh my goodness, this is actually pretty intriguing. You've just answered the next 2 questions that I have here, because it was, what's the driving experience been like? You just said, and has owning your EV really saved you money? Well, you just made the point about how the cost just zonked.
So it's not only the fuel cost though.
Yeah, you can take the
the
maintenance.
maintenance cost is a real saving. As somebody who used to budget annually for how much every time I go to the garage or I go to the dealer, you know, there's that little fat figure with however many zeros on the back that you know they're going to find some way to change, I don't know what, in the car, and you just end up spending, sometimes depending on what you drive, you know, up to maybe 100,000 a year on maintenance, and that change in the maintenance demand is really a very nice thing. I must confess, my little old Leaf, I love her very much. We buy our tires at a regular old tire shop, and she's been doing her thing on that. We've not been having it, but I mean, the Leaf is not a high performance vehicle, but in fact, I didn't even know that there were cars that specified you had to put a special type of tire on them. I can guess those cars all begin with T, or somewhere along that line. I'm very happy in my Leaf though. I don't need to go there. But EVs use regular tropical batteries. I didn't know that either. So the little yellow and red sticker battery runs the AC, and it runs when I one day, I can't remember what happened. Then I opened up the front. I'm like, how come it has that little battery in there? It's an electric car. Why does it have that? But it has the little auxiliary battery, I think they call it, and then it has the nice fancy motor, and then the battery that you can't see that's underneath everything. But yeah, It's been very interesting, very interesting experience.
That's fabulous. So tell me something now. Is it just like a regular car to insure it, or the insurance company look at it and say, "Ooh, this is an EV, let's just give you some different rates"?
When we first came in, I'm going to say it took us nearly 4 months to sort out all of the paperwork. So for example, there were EVs here before, but so whatever was happening in the tax office and upgrading system and blah, 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 there's a section where it says the CC capacity of your engine. No, there's no CC capacity on an electric vehicle. And the concept of you're going to have to find some other way. And, it was proposed, okay, let's just make it a motorbike, but it's not a motorbike. And having gone through all of that and actually meeting some of the people at customs and blah, blah, blah. And then the insurance companies were like, they were just convinced that the car was going to catch fire, and so they were not going to insure us. And it took a little while and pulling of information and so on. And now we don't have any problems. I mean, those teething pains were real pains because you're paying demurrage on your vehicle. You can't drive it. But I think that the government system has been fairly quick to adapt, and so now it's much easier. You don't have to worry about those things anymore. We're really caught up very nicely with managing that kind of paperwork.
Wow. And so the Leaf, which for those who don't know, it's kind of like a hatchback, am I correct?
Yes, it is.
Small vehicle, like a Fit, but I think bigger.
It's bigger than the Fit. So I would say it's probably more like a hatchback Tita. It's a little bigger than the Fit.
Right. And so now you are able to just license and insure and so on without, jumping through hoops of fire and so on.
I am looking forward to buying my second-hand Leaf. So Mr. Jackson, please remember this.
Screenshot.
I am definitely interested in ours, as I said, is a first generation. It's from 2011. The battery has changed several times since then. So we have a 24 kilowatt hour battery. And now they went through 30, 40. I think now they're at 62 kilowatts, which means you can travel so much farther. You can last so many more days without having to charge. I mean, right now, I probably do charge every day, every other day, because my little girl is, getting on in age. And I think with a new vehicle, I would, return to the nice charging twice a week life, which I can tell you, I would not go back to a gas vehicle. I would not.
Wow. So you go country?
How you mean? How you go country? Press the gas and fly go there. I mean, you don't.
Drive it
what's the limit? 60 miles an hour.
Dr. Jackson, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? It's the same Leaf you have from 2015?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
But this year I want to upgrade. I really do.
So that car is 12 years old.
Yes, yes. So we had actually explored getting a new battery, which right now is a big challenge. So my thinking is to keep this one until we can get a new battery, but go ahead and upgrade in the meantime.
I want to focus a little bit on that, because there's also a concept, or people have this concept that, you know, electric cars don't last very long. And well, yours have been around for 12 years.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right. You know, that is, you know, excellent
Speaks.
testimony.
I mean,
about-
I haven't had any problems. One of the interesting things I learned about the battery in the car is that if we could take that battery out and hook it up to the house, it
Right.
actually would work again in terms of the
Yes.
car battery demand. The car demands so much power that even when the battery is dead for the car, it
Yep.
could run your whole entire house, which I just think that's fascinating.
That's
I don't know
phenomenal,
much
though.
about it, but it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's
And
very
as a
interesting.
small island state, we probably should look into that too.
Yeah, I need to go. I need to go investigate this, Carolyn.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. So tell me a little bit about this country run, because like you go country and come back on the same chart, or you go far country meaning from Kingston to, as about to say Mobay, but that's a city, and I don't want the man to go in there and just get me today.
Mobay
But
is country. We're not apologizing.
Please, Carolyn, stop. No, we want to do this again. You know, the Western tip.
But no, you can. And so the first time we took her out onto the North Coast, we had actually connected with somebody in Discovery Bay, you know, just in case, because you know, you're nervous. You can't find anybody else who said this could happen. But the truth of the matter is that if you have a 40 kilowatt or a 60 kilowatt hour battery, there is no reason you can't go to the country and come back. And now that there is some infrastructure around, because when we traveled, we actually traveled with a 110 plug, which means, you know, you're gonna have to wait a while. And when we did charge with the 110, when we did use the trickle charge, because it really was a kind of fun experiment. We tried
Yeah.
everything. Our dogs tried too. They ate one of our cables, but what we found is maybe it would take about 7-8 hours to trickle charge. So where I thought it was going to be that I wake up in the morning and I'm sitting down patiently waiting on the car to finish charging, it really wasn't like that. If you plug in at dinner time, when you get up in the morning, it's fully charged. So even though trickle charge is not the greatest, it's still, you know, it's an excellent backup. It's something that we keep a 110 charger, because you just never know.
Yes, yeah.
But my fear of running out has gotten less, and in fact, I've probably gotten pretty bold. So now the light will be flashing and blinking, and the little plug sign is, you know, like when your empty gas low light comes on, I'm like, whatever, I'm going to look at it. So
oh, you get bad like that.
you learn how to test the vehicle. How you drive makes a big difference, though, a huge difference. And the more responsible you are in terms of driving within the speed limit and not accelerating frequently, you definitely get much more out of the vehicle. In terms of, if you're racing around, you're going to have to plug in that night. If you're driving sensibly, you can last days without having to plug in.
Wow, that is fantastic. That is fantastic.
It's been interesting.
Wow, we're gonna have to talk more, because you know, I know that the time is going, and I'm gonna see if I can whiz through the next section, but that was fascinating. Thanks for that, Carolyn. So now we are gonna run on to EV batteries, but we kind of spoke a little bit about it though. So let me see if we have already covered the questions that we have here. I think we may have. What kind of batteries do electric vehicles use? This is a question for Xavier. Xavier, you want to just touch on that real quick, and then just say if the batteries deteriorate really fast? You could probably tell us like in a sentence or two.
Yeah, man, they're typically lithium based. There are different chemistries that go with it. Some have nickel, some have iron phosphate. In our testing, we felt that iron phosphate based batteries probably best suited for the tropics. They handle the heat a little bit better. nickel-based ones that you'll find like in Teslas are really high performance, though they don't tend to like the heat quite as much, so they tend to condition themselves a little bit. But pretty much most of the electric vehicles coming into Jamaica are very well suited in terms of battery chemistry. Battery degradation has been pretty astounding depending on the model. So, you know, Dr. Jackson would have talked about her experiences in changing the batteries on the Nissan Leaf, especially those early generation Nissan Leafs weren't really suited for the Caribbean especially. So you did find quite a bit of degradation. The later models, however, we've seen Nissan correct that quite a bit. The key part to battery degradation is cooling, or keeping it within a certain temperature band. The older Nissan Leafs didn't have any sort of active cooling system. So the batteries were basically at the whim of nature. If it got hot outside, those batteries would get hot. Newer model EVs, I would say the ones that, you know, we've seen JETCON bringing in, the ones that, you know, our partners at Stewart's are bringing in, and other partners and other dealers in Jamaica, they have what we call active cooling. And so they keep the batteries in a very good state of regarding their temperature. And that is what has been leading to very long lives. When we look at older model Teslas, you know, things coming off the line back in 2012, 10 years old right now, they're doing excellent. So from a degradation point of view, the technology is here, especially given our relatively small size in terms of an island when compared to some of the more continental countries, where I don't think battery degradation is going to be a huge issue going forward in Jamaica.
Okay, that's good news. Oliver, the next two are for you. Can you, getting a notice about my battery. My naughty laptop was listening to you. Oliver, can we extend the life of our battery, and can they be replaced or recycled?
So we actually have an initiative called Tropical Recycles, where we are taking on this challenge of recycling or collecting all kinds of batteries, not just lead acid batteries as we've been collecting for many years at Tropical Battery, but essentially all other battery chemistries, because we consider this to be an environmental imperative. When those batteries are thrown in the trash and end up in the dump and burn, they are very toxic, or if they're just left to rot, they can really cause damage to marine and terrestrial ecosystems, not to mention human health. So we are working on this project where we hope to not just collect spent EV batteries for recycling, but also to repurpose them and reuse them and extend their useful life, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, in renewable energy systems, for example. And also we are looking into the opportunity to extend the life by addressing damaged modules, because, you know, EV batteries are composed of many different modules, and sometimes the problem that they experience are only related to specific modules. So these are areas that we are actively working on to address. And I think, you know, with the right partners, this is something that we can be real leaders on in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. And we're working with other markets of the region that have high electric vehicle adoption, so that we can kind of aggregate as many of these spent EV batteries as possible and get some critical mass to make this a viable venture. We're not trying to make a lot of money with it, but we're trying to do the right thing and hopefully at least have it pay for itself. So we are looking forward to working with government stakeholders on this, because there's regulatory implications. And of course, we are actively working with several different businesses in the whole EV ecosystem to ensure that we are all responsibly addressing end-of-life solutions for electric vehicle batteries, as well as batteries from consumer electronics, laptops and cell phones, etc. So this is an exciting area for us that Tropical Battery has taken on, and we're looking forward to advancing this with some key strategic partners in Jamaica and in some other markets of the region like Bahamas, Barbados, and Dominican Republic.
All right, great. And Xavier, can you say if there are safety rules for charging?
I mean, the technology is pretty mature. I never like to use the word idiot-proof, but it is definitely something that has been considered in standard organizations across the world, electrical safety organizations, IEC, UL. They've pretty much made charging impregnable in terms of, errors either from the user. Chargers are designed to withstand any sort of shock coming from the grid or from the vehicle. So from those perspectives, charging is pretty safe. We've even done a lot of experiments here in Jamaica just to understand, things like charging and plugging in your vehicle in the rain, hard driving rain. And again, the way these charger standards are designed, they're really designed to ensure that charging is safe for anyone. So, from a safety point of view, there really isn't much. One thing we are noticing, however, is the installation of charging infrastructure hasn't necessarily been uniform. So I think, from a regulatory perspective and from an electrical safety perspective, we still do need to do some work in Jamaica to make sure that persons are installing charging stations incorrectly. So the hardware and everything is there, but it still comes down to, whether your electrician is installing it properly. And we've seen a variety of use cases where people have not been installing things properly. So there is something to be said by making sure you have a qualified electrician install, as well as making sure you're buying safety rated, whether it's IEC or UL rated charging stations. If you're buying them, from, Amazon or eBay or anything. I will note that, our dealer partners at the very least are also supplying certified charging stations along with the purchase of the vehicles, to make sure that, we're doing that. And in fact, we're going one level above and making sure we're sending our trained installers to make sure the charging infrastructure is going in correctly as well. So we typically try not to leave that to the customer. We want to make sure that the experience is guaranteed. And so we ensure that we're supplying qualified hardware as well as having a qualified installer do it as well.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Xavier. And so we want to touch now on demand. We know that this is a baby industry, it's a baby sector in Jamaica, but you know that we don't take long to catch up with a whole bunch of stuff. So, Andrew, when did you start offering EVs at JETCON? And what has the response of the public been like?
Okay, so, we sold our first EVs sometime around 2015, 2016.
Okay.
The first one.
I'm surprised.
But then most of them were sold this year.
Ah.
The last year, coming into this year. Demand for them is, not where we would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of interest, a lot of people, asking about them, a lot of inquiries, but in terms of actual sales, certainly not where we would like it to be. But we know it's early days, and things will pick up as we go along.
I think as they learn more about EVs, so there's what I think is a healthy curiosity about it, and people just want to see, does this work? Is this viable, and so on. I strongly suspect.
Yes. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest, right? But
yes.
I'm still a little skeptical, and that is expected, right?
Yes.
But we'll feel over time, that will change.
All right, great. And I just want to acknowledge Odini Sibley. We do see your hand. You've raised your hand, Odini. We're gonna allow you to ask a question at the end. So I just want you to know we're not ignoring you. All right. And we thank you so much for your interest and for your patience. So we're gonna come to you in a bit, Odini. All righty, great. So Andrew and Xavier, and I think you would have touched on this a little bit, you know, when Xavier said that they're at a premium of 10%, and you could explain maybe a little more what that really means to us. But for the both of you, are EVs really affordable? At that 10% premium or that 20% premium, are EVs really affordable? And that's for both of you.
Xavier, you go first.
You want me to go start? Okay.
You first,
all right.
not you
So-
first, not you first.
So, I mean, again, it depends on the lens you're looking at it. From a total cost of ownership, if you factor in purchase price, operation, maintenance, resale value, they're definitely affordable. However, you know, I recognize especially that, you know, the price points at where EVs are even available in the market in Jamaica isn't where it needs to be. So I think there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that from a private car perspective, that there are EVs that are accessible at different price points. You know, our brands, you know, are starting at, you know, what, 6 million new, 6.5 million new. That is not what I would define as completely accessible to the marketplace. I do believe they're at good value at the price points they are in terms of what they offer, but at the end of the day, not everybody is at that price point. And so there's a lot of work to be done in that under 6 million mark to make sure that there are more options in the market, more quality options, and more supported. That's where I would say we are right now.
If I may, it also depends on utilization. So the more an electric vehicle is used, the more you're going to save. So if you're an Uber driver, you know, driving 250 miles a day, you're going to see those savings accrue very quickly. And that's why some of us are really targeting the commercial market for this transition, because that's, you know, those are the customers who have the most to save and who can really realize those savings very quickly.
All righty. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And that's a point to really remember. So yes, so the price point can be, and I guess maybe that's the case with a lot of things that are highly efficient. You pay upfront, so to speak, and it pays back for itself over the lifetime of the particular item. Okay, thank you for that. Now, the next point that we're getting here is that many persons are asking if Jamaican mechanics know how to service EVs. I know that there are some training programs ongoing courtesy of Project eDrive. Before we respond to that, and I know we are getting near to the end, I want Andrew and Xavier to take on the question of after sale care, right? So please speak to what are the EVs, and this would be brands. We know one or two brands, but you might want to just name some. What are the EVs that are available on the Jamaican market? Xavier, you can speak to the new, and Andrew, you can speak to the used, and tell us what is the maintenance support, because we all know when all is said and done, we want to know that there's somebody out there who can handle our EV.
No
Okay,
problem.
so-
Thanks. Okay, Andrew, you want to go first on the use?
Okay, so you know, one of the most popular brands there now is the two generation of Nissan Leaf. Okay, and as Carolyn had said, you know, there's very little maintenance that is required on these cars, right? But our mechanics over the years have adapted very well to new technology. Quite frankly, hybrid cars are far more complex than full electric cars. They have a lot of similarity, but the hybrids are far more complex. And, you know, we have adapted to those very, very well over the years. There's a lot of, you know, so I know some training programs are going on, but at the end of the day, real training is hands-on work on these cars. The problem is, and the good thing is that, you know, there's really little work to be done. I think as Xavier had mentioned before, you know, it's in many cases a matter of inspecting the brakes and the suspension parts and you know, topping up the washer fluid and so on. Very, very little more. updating the software, taking a look in the electronics and the computers and see what's going on. But there really is very little maintenance to be done on these cars.
I'm liking the sound of that. Xavier, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, with the EVs, you have two types of new. You have new, which is dealer and manufacturer supported, and you can have the new, which is the gray market. And I can't really speak to the gray market ones where, persons are just bringing in cars on their own for themselves. But on the new dealer side
Would you call that the gray market?
I would term that the gray market. So they're new cars, but they're not necessarily, supported necessarily by a manufacturer. So a great example of that would be Tesla. Right? Tesla does not support the Jamaica market in that sense officially. So there's no dealer or manufacturer presence on it, but persons are bringing them in. And so the ability to service and repair them is sort of left to the community, right? To be able to sort of figure that out. The side that I'm coming from is, directly with the manufacturer and dealer. So Flash Motors represents the BYD brand. BYD is the #1 new selling EV brand in Jamaica and actually across the world. We're outselling Tesla on a global basis right now. And part of that for us, in qualifying ourselves to be that, representing the brand is obviously being able to support it, right? So all of our dealer partners, which is stewards here in Jamaica, are fully trained on it by the manufacturer. We have local spare parts inventory. We have access to, all their knowledge library. We deal with manufacturer warranties and replacements. So, whether it's the battery, which is what people are usually concerned about, if it doesn't meet the warranty, can we replace the battery at the manufacturer cost? Yes, we can. In terms of the models we have available, we have a subcompact car, the BYD Dolphin. We have a medium-sized SUV, which is the Yuan Plus, and we have a large luxury sports SUV, which is the BYD Tang, all available here in the market now. Sales have been going very well. We're actually having a hard time keeping up with demand right now.
Really?
Because it's at this point, we're probably one of the only new brands that can really support the market. There are other new car manufacturers that do have EVs available, but probably not in the same quantity that we can supply into the market right now. But we do know that over time, as the larger, more established manufacturers, BYD is, pretty new in the Western world. But like I said, globally, it is the #1 EV manufacturer in the world and well known in other country markets. But we do anticipate over the next few months, 12 to 16 months, that your more traditional manufacturers that are here in Jamaica will be starting to bring that on board. And of course, that's a great thing because consumers will not only have the new brands that are being introduced and the new products from the existing brands like the Nissan Leaf that are in the marketplace, but they'll now be able to go back to their whichever brand of choice that they currently work with right now and be able to have electric options available. So I think the market in Jamaica, it's still pretty new. But the options are growing, I'd say, on a month-by-month basis. New models are landing and new options are coming to place for persons to look at.
Okay, all right. That's really, really intriguing. And of course, as I mentioned before, Project eDrive has undertaken training of trainers, first responders, and mechanics. I'm just letting everybody know that is happening as well through a partnership with Heart NSTA Trust. So you all need to know this. So now, Odini, as promised, we want to hear from Odini. He has a question. Sorry, I'm making assumptions about. So Odini, you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes. I don't have a question, but I'm just we kind of come on a little late. I'm the way one come on early, but I have a fan of electric vehicle, like from a member just hearing about this about early part of the 2000, like 15, then we had. But no, I think that earlier on, I hear one of the persons said that Jamaica is in the electric market, but is a small portion. I don't think so. Jamaica is actually consuming electric vehicle more right now because of the reason why I said so. One, some Jamaicans do not, I can't afford to purchase them now. But person would like to have their own electric vehicle, just about right across Jamaica, including me. I am training for it. I am doing the program online with the Jagas.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes, right.
Nice.
So my first driving in electric vehicle is the BID at the Jamaica Auto School and
Right.
the JUTC bus, the electric bus.
Nice.
Right. So I'm glad for this, but I think this program that you're having, it should be more in school, be more on the table of the news, right? And everybody, I'm going to say this with faith, confidence, and assurance. Electric vehicle can go anywhere, any gas vehicle.
Yes.
So if person out there afraid, scared,
Yes.
are optimistic about owning and driving an electric vehicle, don't be afraid. Go own one. Go buy one. Go get one. It can go anywhere and gas vehicle go.
Yes.
The reason why I say that, it is the eJam Instagram page. I noticed it, and also
Okay.
there is so much charge station from here to Ochi, or to Mobile, or to Nigri, or even go around Jamaica and come back to Kingston. You won't die from a battery charge. You won't stall from a battery charge. It will carry go and carry back right around Jamaica. Right?
Around. Okay. Nice.
Right.
Nice.
So with this also, the capacity of battery that is being developing now,
Yeah.
right? You just maybe if you feel from Kingston now, like I'm working in the transport center now. If you feel
Right.
from half a tree right now and go Mobile and one hand and come back to Kingston the other hand, maybe a 2-time charge. And that can done in a 1 day. Right?
Nice. Nice.
So,
yes. Yes.
This is why I say it should be more on the news of the table and more wider public.
Yeah.
Electric vehicle can go everywhere and anywhere a gas vehicle can go. That's all I think I have to say right now.
Thank you so much for that, Odini. And you know, I have to concur because I did get a ride in an EV, and as much as I was biting my nails about if we were going to run out, we did not. And we did do a proper long trip, you know, but it is good to hear from other people with different models who have had that experience. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you very, very much, Odini. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you're doing the course. Every success to you as you continue with your studies, okay? And there's a question here from Carolyn Jackson. For Oliver, is Tropical Battery looking to replace or install new batteries for vehicles that need to change, like mine?
I would imagine you're talking about EV batteries. We are
Yeah.
exploring a couple of different suppliers for EV batteries, and we'd be happy to look at the specifications of the battery you're looking for and do our best to supply it. So this is obviously an area that's deemed synergistic to our legacy core business. As you mentioned, you know, EVs also use lead acid batteries for auxiliary power, and so we saw this as a clear synergy, and we are certainly looking to supply electric vehicle replacement batteries. So please reach out, and I'm happy to assist.
Awesome. Carolyn, I think you're in business. All right. Let me see if there are any other questions that I have not seen. I don't think so. Thanks for your input, Howard. Howard has been in the chat assisting with information. Thank you for that, Howard. Really appreciate your interest and your input. Thank you so much. I think we've come to the end. Imagine. So I want to thank you also for your patience, because I believe that you had anticipated a 1-hour session, but you know, when things get electric. So we went a little over the time, but I'm so glad that you stayed. I'm so glad that our audience stayed as well, because it's a topic that's really, really interesting. I mean, I have people like wondering, so can I just convert my vehicle, like just take out all of the parts? I guess that's for another section. Can I just convert? So I just want to say thank you, gentlemen and lady, for your input. Are there any final comments? Any final comments from you, Carolyn, Andrew, Oliver, Flash? I will let the lady go first because I think she went last time. Carolyn, any comments from you? Any closing comments?
I think I would close with saying that if you're serious about sustainable development, if you're serious about climate change, if you're serious about environment, and if you're serious about your child, you have to look into what are the benefits of going electric and support the development within the country where you want to grow, where you want your family to grow. And that's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to end with. Do it.
All right. Thank you, Doc. Let me just move across on the board as I see you here. Oliver, any closing statement?
Well, I would just say that, of course, I feel strongly about the environmental stewardship case, but I also feel strongly about saving money, and I think most of us do. And we were just up in Miami at the Renewable Energy Conference last week, and when I looked to take an Uber from downtown Miami to the airport in Fort Lauderdale, the least expensive Uber option was the Tesla. And when I spoke to my Uber driver about how much he was paying to charge his Tesla, driving about 250 miles a day, it was between $7 and $10 a day versus $45 a day when he was doing Uber with a Honda Civic. So he's saving $30 a day. Multiply that times 5 days a week, if that's what he's working. He's probably working 7 days a week, times 52 weeks in the year. That's some serious savings. And multiply that by 3, 4, 5 years, and you've bought yourself a Tesla. Combine that with solar power in a country like Jamaica, and again, you are saving on your JPS bill, as well as supplying JPS with the least cost electricity for all your neighbors and the community. And you're saving at the pump. And we need to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels. We need to do that to keep the Jamaican dollar strong, to save foreign exchange, to ensure that we have more money to spend on health and education and roads and all the public goods that we deserve in Jamaica. So this is how we can each do our part for the environment, do our part to save money. And as with any good investment, the sooner you make that investment, the sooner you amortize that investment. So the time is now. We have also established a division called Tropical Finance, and we are working with several financial institutions to make electric vehicles and renewable energy systems more accessible for more people. So this is something that I'm passionate about. I know my fellow panelists are as well, and it's something that we can really all come together with to do what's right for Jamaica and make this country more independent, more, to improve the quality of life for all of us ultimately.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Oliver. Andrew, your final comments.
I just want to echo what Oliver said. You know, the combination of solar power and EVs, I think is really, the solution to Jamaica's energy problems. We have had energy problems in Jamaica for so long. The cost of energy is such a big, expenditure. Those two technologies, I believe, can solve a lot of our problems. So as Oliver said, there will be more money to spend on hospitals and roads and all the social services that we need. We need to move fast in going electric and going solar. And the government has made some good moves. The reduction in the import duties on solar equipment, solar batteries, solar inverters, solar panels to zero, and the reduction in the import duties on electric cars. We need to accelerate the move to solar and to electric cars.
Thank you. Fabulous. Xavier, looks like you're getting the last say.
Everybody took all my speaking points. No, on behalf of, the other members from JIVA, they spoke very well on, sort of the economic and structural benefits to electric mobility. And, that's the work that we're going to continue as an industry association. We're, it's just 3 of us here, but there are, I believe, 9 others of different parts of, stakeholders and different companies, in the industry that are moving to make electric mobility more accessible. And I think accessibility is very key. Dr. Jackson was a very good example of, you need to see it to believe it. You need to experience it. We've always found that the best way, these forums that eDrive has put on are very useful, but the best way to really communicate it is to get people's butts in the seats of an EV. Dr. Jackson, she talked about just the first time she launched in her Nissan Leaf. And I mean, if you guys know what a Nissan Leaf looks like, it's the most surprising quick car you'll ever see, because it does not look quick. It does not look fast or anything. It looks like a very practical car until you meet it, coming off a light. And I think that's the experience that everybody should have. And, we completely understand that, again, not everybody is in a position for a private car for themselves. So we're especially eager on, myself and the Flash Motors team is especially eager on expanding electric mobility to all sectors of transportation, whether we're talking about taxis, public buses. I mean, we can even start talking about things like, electrified train and transit, what that looks like. I know we've just been talking about cars, but electric transportation doesn't just stop at 4 wheels, goes to 2 wheels. It also, applies to train tracks and boats and airplanes. The benefits remain the same. So we believe that Jamaica and the Caribbean is an excellent place. We have great temperatures, relatively short driving distances. The technology is here today for it. And so we're just going to continue to work with our industry partners, important stakeholders like eDrive, JPS, IDV, the government of Jamaica, to continue to move forward. And, it's our hope that in the next few years, the Caribbean can be the #1 market for electric mobility in the world. We have the capability. So we're just going to continue to do that work to make that happen.
Wow. Well, I think you've said it all, gentlemen and lady. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, eDrive, for putting on this live session, because I certainly learned a lot today, and I'm sure that our participants and our viewers did as well. Thank you so much. Matthew, I see you're in the chat. Thumbs up. Matthew was one of our innovators, but that's a story for another time. But big up yourself, big up yourself. And thank you to all the persons who came out. Tell your friends and your friends of your friends that, hey, you've got to catch the next live because it's so informative. Better yet, you could just go by JETCON. You could just hit up Xavier to just say, hey, as he put it, get your, let me tailor it, get your body in an EV. Yeah, I thought I'd just edit that down just a touch for my, for my talking points. Thank you for sharing with us this evening, Andrew Jackson, Xavier Gordon, Oliver Hill, Dr. Carolyn Pinnock Jackson. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's really been a great night. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I believe that those who are listening were enjoying as well. Oh, Ramon, you're here. Thanks for an excellent session. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you for thanking us. And until next time, guys, it is peace and stay electric, stay electrified. Carolyn, I want a ride off of your car. Good night, everyone. Colleen messaging. Many thanks to everyone who joined. Many thanks to that would be me. And to the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take good care. Bye-bye.